Hammy curls.
Should I be lying down? Or...
It doesn't matter. No,
Okay.
like that's fine. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking sports performance, specifically skill breakdown. Now, you've heard me talk about this before, and maybe you've even been to one of my seminars about this, but skill breakdown is the fundamental thing that we do as coaches that help our athletes get better. Now, we do this for a lot of reasons. Obvious reason is if someone's doing something incorrectly, we can spot it as coaches, make an adjustment, and help them get better. But really what we're trying to do is get them better either on the field, on the platform, wherever they're performing. We can do this with our personal training clients that don't play sports. But really the goal here is for us to have an understanding with our clients or with our athletes to get them to understand what we are trying to do. And so I want to make it helpful for you as coaches, but you as athletes listening to this, maybe filming yourself, you can use some of these techniques to help you get better at breaking down the movements that you do and get better. So let's get started. So first of all, we need to understand what we mean by skills and what we're talking about. And when we're talking skills, there's different classifications. We can use open and closed skills, and we can use repetitive and non-repetitive type skills and transferable skills. Okay, those are all things I'm going to mention in just a second, but I want to start with how we break it down so that training those different types of skills makes a little more sense at the end of the video. So what are we going to do? So when we take a skill, and we can do anything, again, it can be a lift, like if we're watching someone squat, or we can do a sporting activity like a volleyball serve. Take any skill you want and you can kind of run this system through. So let's do a clean and jerk. It's a pretty easy one to understand and an easy one to conceptualize. So we start from the ground, we pull the bar up to our shoulders, and then in a second movement, we jerk it overhead. So what do we need to do? Well, if I'm trying to coach this lift, there could be any number of things that go wrong with my athlete at any given time in that lift. So in order for me to break it down, and in order for me to help my athlete understand what I want to work on and where we're going wrong, I want to break that up or chunk it up into smaller areas or smaller phases. So that's the first thing. We want to split into phases. So phase out each lift. So for example, on the clean and jerk, it's pretty easy. We can have our pull phase. Then there's like a little transition and scoop or first transition, whatever you want to call it. Then there's the second pull, the receive phase, when we receive the bar, or often called the third pull, and then the jerk itself. So 4 different phases throughout that entire movement, clean and jerk. But the idea with that is if I want to, say for example, someone's having problems right when they pull their bar, their hips pop up. Well, it might be everything goes well after that, but that's the first thing that they're doing wrong. I want to be able to go to just that one phase and kind of work on that. And so when we break down each phase then has its key elements. So, for example, on that first pull, one of the key elements, or the key elements, we want to keep that bar close to the body. Our setup should be pretty good in terms of how our back's going to be angled, where our hips are in relation to our knee. If our back is slightly concave or straight, somewhere in there. And then our hips and shoulders rising at the same rate. In other words, we don't want our hips to shoot up and then come forward, because that's going to push that bar forward, right? And that's what we call the mechanical rationale. So just a quick recap. We're going to break down our skill into phases. In this case, the clean and jerk. Our first phase is our first pull. And that's generally from the ground to the knee. That's our first pull, our first phase. A key element that we need to identify is, again, our setup position, like I talked about, and how close that bar is, and how our shoulders and hips should rise at the same rate of speed. And the mechanical rationale is this is what you're going to tell your athlete. And we're telling them, hey, we need to work on this, and here's why. It's always that here's why that we're trying to identify. So the here's why for this is we want to get them understanding that if they have those hips pop up and then the shoulders come back, it's going to create a forward momentum, and the bar is going to go out in front of them, and they're going to end up catching the bar way out here in front, and on a maximal lift, it may not be a good catch. They could recover from that, but it's going to limit how much they can lift at some point. So that's what we need to do. We have to understand which phase we're looking at, what the key elements are in that phase, and then provide the mechanical rationale, the reason for the change that we're trying to make. So then we could go into the second pull, or triple extension, and some people do different things like doing a catapult versus triple extension. Different lifters will do certain different things, but there are some fundamental basics that we can all agree on when it comes to what those phases might be in our clean and jerk, or in our squat, or a baseball swing. But again, breaking it down will help you then kind of chunk it up so that we can understand that if we're having problem with this particular issue that I would talk about, we could have our athlete practice a lot of just liftoffs. Load up the bar with maybe more than they can actually clean, and then just bring it up to the knee and hold it, and just work on that first pull and reinforce that position. So again, that's how we'd go back and fix it. Now, let me go to the kind of take a step further here. When we've broken this down and we've identified each phase of the lift or skill, and we've identified those key elements, and now for each key element we've provided a mechanical rationale or a reason why we need to fix this, or a reason why it needs to go a certain way, it can run right into the next part of the skill. That is when we get into looking at the different types of skills that we're going to need to address. Repetitive skills, open versus closed skills, non-repetitive, I forgot to mention that one. And those are important to understand, because when you go to lift, or when you go to do a movement, or when you are a coach and you're watching a play happen with your athletes, and then you want to try to take a step back and correct it, what you have to understand is some things, you're going to have to take time. You're going to have to understand that this is not always going to be something that can be done right away. You can't always train for everything that you're going to come up with. So now that we've looked at different skills and how to break them down, how to chunk them up, we need to understand why we do this. So when we're looking at our client or our athlete, it's going to help us do two things. One, zero in right where we really need help. We don't want to waste our time and be inefficient with our coaching. We want to make sure that we coach what we need to coach and work on that particular area. Now, sometimes you're going to have to prioritize different movements, right? If I'm watching a video and there's 5 things wrong, or if I've got the athlete in person and there's 5 or 6 things going on that are incorrect, we do need to correct them all. I'm going to have to prioritize. In other words, which skill do I go to first, or which skill do I work on next, or can I work on 2 or 3 of them at a time? And again, that's going to be based on their training age, what your goals are, and really where in that phase or where in that skill is the problem going on. If it's one of the first things that they're messing up, it could impact the rest of the skill. So we obviously want to prioritize that one first rather than work on a smaller detail. And where that comes into play is when we talk about transferable skills. So as coaches, as strength coaches, we want to make sure that our skills that we train our athletes, or our exercises that we pick when we're doing our exercise selection, are going to work on, strengthening, increase endurance and power, speed, all of that stuff. But they have to be chosen based upon either the weaknesses of the athlete, the phase throughout the year that we're at, And, we want to be efficient. If we look at like every little thing we could do, we could come up with an exercise for everything in the body, every movement, everything. That could take forever. Your sessions turn into 3-4 hour long sessions. So we need to be efficient. And so with efficiency comes what we call these transferable skills. A transferable skill would be, say, for example, if I've got a rotational athlete like a batter or a golfer, I don't necessarily want to take a band and wrap it around the head of my club and then like do resisted swings. That's really going to recruit more muscles. It's going to kind of mess up my actual swing, right? That's not helping me be better or stronger in my swing. It could really screw up the timing, the firing of the muscles in my nice fluid swing. So what do? I could do Russian twists. I could do halo twists. I could do some wood chops with bands or with weights. There's a lot of things you could do that are going to work certain movements and certain elements of that golf swing, and then they transfer into the actual skill. So you'll work on your skill of actually swinging out there on the driving range. We're not going to bring the club into the gym and load it up with a bunch of weights and start swinging it around. That's not really going to be a good transferable skill, because we also need to think about, say, let's look at a baseball player. A baseball player, they don't just bat and they don't just play in the field, they do both. Now I know there are some that do specialize, but if I'm training someone with like a loaded bat to swing, and then I'm training someone, some rotational exercises to help them throw, again, that's just going to add more and more and more repetitions and exercises, when really what we could be doing to better serve them is train one movement, one rotational movement, or maybe 2 rotational movements, but again, things that are going to transfer over into different skills. Because when you look at these different skills, like say batting and fielding, those are 2 different skills. One is a closed skill, meaning they have a start and a finish, like a swing. We set up, we swing and either hit the ball or miss the ball. We execute it based on how well we do that closed skill, versus an open skill, which would be a play in the field, where let's take the shortstop. They hit a ground ball. Let's say they're left-handed. They hit that ground ball to the right. They have to turn, go crossbody, backhand it, pick it up, and then throw across their body to first base. A lot of different things. There's rotation, there's jumping, there's stretching, there's bending, there's force production, all kinds of things that go into that skill. And if we say, okay, today we're going to work on backhanded ground balls, and then tomorrow we're going to work on front-handed ground balls, and then ground balls, again, your training sessions become over and over. So you can hit balls to your athletes and get them in different positions and train that on the field. But as strength coaches, we can't write a workout specifically for backhanded ground balls or for line drives. We are going to work on skills that are transferable, that then can be used in those open skills. So when that athlete is challenged with an open skill like that, they are ready for it. They have the body balance, the awareness, the kinesthetic awareness, where they are in space and time, so that they can make a play and use the strength, use the balance and coordination that they have, and the body awareness that they have to make that play, right? And they can make that play better when they take those tools they've learned in the gym out onto the field. So again, we want to be efficient when we're trying to break down those skills. So we're not going to sit there and try to account for every single scenario that could ever happen and come up with 1 or 2 exercises for that. That would make our session go forever. So we want to work on transferable skills. And again, the other thing, that was one reason why we break these down, because when we can break down a skill movement, if there's something in that swing, especially that close swing that we're not doing or we see as a problem, we can break that swing down and figure out where the problem is and then focus our exercises on that weakness. Secondly, if we are trying to help someone with that close skill, or we'll say a repetitive or a non-repetitive skill. A swing is a non-repetitive skill. Swing, one and done. A clean and jerk. Clean, jerk, done. Now that's 2 technically closed skills put together to create one movement, clean and jerk, but they're both non-repetitive. versus a repetitive skill, which is swimming or running or something that one stroke leads right into the next stroke. So when we're breaking these skills down, we need to understand whether this is repetitive or non-repetitive. So that helps, that's why we have the skill breakdown: phases, key elements, mechanical rationale, so that we can help them understand. So if we've got a repetitive skill and they're going to swim, one stroke, we notice that maybe they're turning too much, or their head's coming up, going in a different way, and that's affecting the going into that next stroke, right? So when I break that down, this phase here, one of the key elements is I want to have my head down, so I'm going to have a better transfer into that next part of the skill, or the repetitive part of the skill. The closed skills are a little bit easier because they have a start and a finish, right? But again, we have these breakdown ideas so that we can have an easier way to break down our skills. But the last reason we do this, the last reason we want to put everything into phases, look at key elements per phase and the mechanical rationales to help them, is when we're developing our cues for our athletes. So that's the last thing here. Very simple. If I'm trying to tell an athlete, say, to squat lower, and I'm just, my cue, I'm watching them intently, and I'm like, lower, lower, lower. They probably understand that I mean squat lower, but they may not understand how to get there, and they may not understand, they may think they are low. They may not have that kinesthetic awareness or that body awareness I talked about earlier. So if I'm breaking it down, I want to get them to feel what it feels like at the bottom of a squat. So that might be something I do, so I can say, when I say lower, now they have, if I've practiced getting them all the way down as low as I need them to go, they understand what that feels like. And so as they progress, or as they get into it, and I'm yelling, go lower, we now have communicated what I mean by that. They know that now I mean go all the way down, and they know what it's supposed to feel like because we've practiced that. If I just throw out random cues, heels, 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 that might mean they're pitching too far forward, right? But in the moment, heels, heel. You want me to raise my heels, go back on my heels, rock backwards? I mean, there could be any number of things that could happen based on what the athlete thinks you're trying to tell them. So when we chunk this out into phases, key elements, mechanical rationales, it gives us an opportunity, using that mechanical rationale, to come up with a cue to help fix that during their skill or during their movement, their lift or whatever, that when they understand that, they know what I'm trying to accomplish. So if I have that cue, it makes my coaching way more efficient, so I can just yell out whatever I need and they understand. It creates that cognitive awareness of what they're needing to do to get the job done, and what I mean when I yell out my cue. So it just helps with the efficiency. So hopefully this helps. Hopefully this sheds a little bit of light on what we want when we're talking about skill development or skill breakdown. The reasons why we do it, and when to properly use it. When we're looking at coaching open skills versus closed skills, using transferable skills to help train for open skills. And then we can use these other breakdown methods to look at closed skills to make sure that those closed skills are executed as well as possible, and for them to understand our cueing and what we mean when we're trying to correct what we see in that skill. All right, hope this helps. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. That really helps us to grow the channel. We've got a lot of great content that we want to put out this year. Things we've been kind of sitting on for a little while, but we're making it happen this year. So don't forget, like, subscribe, tell your friends, comment down below if you have any questions or want me to go in more depth with any of this stuff, or even give you some citations for where I got some of this information. All right, have a good one.